are on the edge. This to me is the absolute edge of real history. The Thames was filled with sewage. Basically, the stench of the raw sewage in the streets of London meant that the government insisted something must be done, and they employed a gentleman, effectively head of health, to work out a way to get rid of the faeces and crap from the streets. His idea was that they should build effectively sewer runs straight into the Thames. So all of London's faeces flushed itself into the Thames. It's a fascinating study about what is the limit on a city growing, and it's basically the way in which you can cope with its effluents. That's the limiting factor. So this appeared to be a stroke of genius. The only trouble was the Thames is tidal, and as a result of that it didn't wash itself out to sea, it floated backwards and forwards. And where were the people of London getting their water from? Straight from the Thames. Hence the private companies of that talking about the detritus in the water as being good for you, because they had no way of working out how to do anything but, and profit is always a great motivator. But in 1848, James Simpson approached the Lambeth Water body and said, you should draw your water from further up the Thames where it's not tidal and the water should be cleaner. And he went to the board and said, there is a place, Seething, Thames Ditton, where it's perfect to take water out. But he had to convince the board to spend an absolute fortune to not just build all of this, but to then build a 13-mile pipe to take the water back into London. Now you can imagine the board, a responsible body of august individuals, trying to be swayed by this, said, Simpson, you fool, we can't just make a decision like this. You're going to have to come back, we need proper research around it all, and we're going to make two of our governors partner with you to do that work. 2 days later they went back to the board and said, we want to spend this money, and the board went, okay then. And as a result, from 1848 they started building this. In 1850 it was taking clean water into London. 1852 it had its grand opening, and there is a most brilliant minutes of actually what the canapes were that were served, and the London Illustrated News has a drawing of there, and over there enormous marquees, and then of these filter beds here. Why are these filter beds important? In 1854 there was a major outbreak of cholera in Soho Square. In the space of 10 days 700 people died. Nobody knows how the cholera started, but what we do know, it was a little baby. They don't know how the baby got it. The mother was a brilliant mother and spent her time ensuring she was washing out the sheets, washing out the clothes. But the trouble was, all of the soiled water was going into their cesspit, and the cesspit, the brickwork, was rotten, and the cesspit was leaking into the Broad Street pump. So the people in that area were effectively taking water from a poison source. John Snow, Dr. John Snow, our second great hero, actually was convinced that cholera was waterborne. At that time, everybody believed it was miasmic, you breathed it in. So Snow had to try and prove this, and he used the Broad Street pump as he drew a most astonishing map, having tracked down who died where, and basically showed that they all lived within the proximity of this pump. And therefore, if nothing else, there was evidence there that it might have something to do with it. A local Reverend Whitehead, actually disagreed fundamentally with Snow at the outset. He believed it was miasmic. Actually, after 3 days, he got to say, hold on, there's too much here going on. It's got to be that. And it was with his help that they managed to remove the handle off the pump. Everybody celebrates that astonishing piece of investigation. It's actually the start of epidemiology, it's the start of public health, and Snow's ghost map, as it's known, is one of the most iconic images in the world of maps and beyond. It's quite staggering. But still they didn't believe it. And the guy who actually was the head of the government's institution promoting the miasmic theory was the same chap who introduced the sewage pumping into the Thames. So not only did he cause the problem, he then served to deny the reality of what was there. Snow needed to do what he called his grand experiment. He needed to be able to prove conclusively that if you were drinking water from one company and if you were drinking it from a company that was providing clean water, your chances of death were minimised. He'd carried out that experiment, and the water that he used as pure was the water that came from here. And he was able to prove that basically if you drank from Lambeth supplies, you had sort of 0.07% of chance of getting cholera. If you drank from Southern supplies, you were up in sort of 70-odd chance of getting it. Still, Parliament didn't believe it, and it was actually only after Snow's death that they finally admitted it, when the self-same guy carried out the same experiment to prove it to himself. What a great chap. Snow was an astonishing man. He was also the guy who worked out how much anaesthetic to give to people. He was actually Queen Victoria's anaesthetist for the birth of 3 of her children. This was a Renaissance individual, a great mind. Simpson and he just did these astonishing things around it all. So that whole story of cholera actually means we're standing on a place that was the start of public health, the start of clean water. And we ought to be honouring this whole site, because between the Lambeth works and Chealsea, which he subsequently built, you've actually got from these effectively crude to the most sophisticated still used around the world. So, people know that over there was the original Mount of Seeding, as it subsequently became termed. It was quarried to build Ham House and Hampton House, subsequently Hampton Court Palace. When this work was carried out, they took away the rest of some of the stone, and you'll find in some of the lintels over in those buildings actual original seeding stone. So we're going to go up and just come down the little road there, and that will then take us back towards the pub. Is everybody okay with that?